Hi, and hi 2026. Well, this weekend there was a beautiful sense of self that appeared in a way that showed a beautiful distinction of that. So this week I'm calling it Be Aware of the Tar Baby. Be self. And without a doubt, whoever comes or contacts for a session, there is this aspect that I will talk about in this share. It's always there. It's always there, and it's always there in everyone. It's that aspect of self. And it's consciousness in the whole that expresses its own sense of being. And the cards that I will read towards the end actually are self, respect, and now as the complementary card to it. Self-respect now. It's always now, 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 now. Next is really just another now, 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 in the presence of that. And I think what's happened over the last time frame or mode of seeing has been in a hierarchical pattern. And we also fall for this hierarchical pattern, which I suppose there's many aspects to it, how that actually came about, but it's in truth not the truth. And it needs addressing. And it needs addressing in the reality we've experienced in this hierarchical pattern. Anyone in any sovereignty movement understands their source, you, and everything else is underneath. Whether he's king, queen, parliament, laws, regulations, nothing can come between source and you and that self. And that doesn't mean that we don't participate in the collective and decisions of the collective, but it's still important to have a sense of self, seeing in that process. So the first being was online, and very often that connection to that being or the essences that show up for that before even making contact reveals an enormous amount. And again, sometimes the negative is positive and the positive is negative. Nothing is really negative. It is in the application and the context that it can truly be seen. And in this case, there was this sense of courage and determination and clarity, and what showed up was this aspect of herself coming through, saying, "I'm so sorry." The amount of courage and tenacity and clarity. What was I thinking bringing that here? Because the amount of ethics and integrity carried by this being for decades has in fact been very painful and not reciprocated. And it's caused an enormous amount of pain. Sometimes that element, the world reflects the opposite. So you can see yourself. But if we don't see ourselves and we only see the opposite, it can be painful. But in this case, there was a wonderful release. And at this stage of life, that release had already happened, to be able to let it go and to let that which was the contrast sort itself out. And that's where it's beware of the tar baby. Don't touch it. because it will truly suck you in, and it's painful, and it's not your job. So the second being that came had a similar element to it. And the best way to describe it is this tornado that we have the capacity to stand still in. And what it was showing this being was that there is an aspect beyond that capacity. And that capacity can see it without being in it or needing to stand still in it, just see it. And how this showed up was because the relationship this being was in was with somebody who truly had this capacity and has had that capacity for lifetimes. And when somebody has that capacity for lifetimes, they can take on roles of standing in that for others because they're capable of standing in it. But when others in this being's life pulls it further, I call that these beings have got to the bottom of the bucket, and they've gone round and round and round at the bottom of the bucket trying to find the bottom of the bucket, that they create a hole in the bucket and they go through the bucket, and they're always looking for the bottom of the bucket, but they'll never find it because they've already drilled a hole through the bottom of the bucket. And they generally want to look for, where's the bottom of it, where's the bottom of it, where's the bottom? There is no bottom. There's an infinity, there is no bottom. There's just the ever-present now of infinity that this consciousness gets to share in this 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional, whatever world we access, and we have access to it all, because the bottomless is the all, the infinity of it all. But they can pull these people into locking in with that process. And what showed up here is this great capacity of these beings for the being that I saw to actually be able to observe this and in clarity be calm in that space. And that had arrived, the calmness of this vision. And in seeing what the other is doing, be able to say, that's your journey to work out. But there is my line. I can see it. And to be involved in that extent is to touch the tar baby. And I'm aware of the tar baby. And in my calmness, I can see that's not my work. Now, this pattern also showed up in a different way, where the being in this space of celebrating something magnificent and inviting others to it was aware of those that are invited. Some have learned to stand still in the dynamics of it, and others had not. And in wanting everyone to stand and celebrate that space, the mind cannot be taken away to be concerned, how can I bring this being into here? How can I resolve this? There's nothing to resolve. The focus is on your celebration. Focus on your celebration and let the others do what they do. That way we have the best gatherings and the best parties. I'm sure you've all experienced that over the last couple of weeks, that if you stayed in that space, you had a wonderful time. If you touched the tar baby, you now have stories of how awful it was and what they did, and you touched the tar baby. Be self. That's what showed up. And it showed up for one other being. I love how these themes show up. And this being very much wanted to connect to this. It's like it was screaming out, I've been here all along. When can I make connection to this self? And over the lifetimes, this being had been an extraordinary diplomat, but over and over and over again. And a diplomat doesn't connect with that. It holds a space. It holds a space between this and that, and tries to bring calm to it at a cost of not expressing that. Because a diplomat doesn't express that. They're diplomatic, dual too. They're diplomatic. So they stand between these that cannot negotiate and those who wish to negotiate. And when that becomes a pattern, a diplomat cannot say what they feel, how they see it. And what was beautiful is that this came into presence, understanding that's not the work anymore, that this is the life. So that was a very strong theme, and it led to the beauty of being clear about that, having clarity about that, and that clarity is being seen. And you too, no doubt, will share in this scene, because it wouldn't have showed up in the sessions if it wasn't there on a larger level. And with one being, it showed up, again, all these beings have a great capacity, great endurance, great meeting the world that is not like them in their capacity. Not everyone has your capacity. We all have strengths that others do not have. And to actually stand in the capacity without asking others to be the same. And this particular being, because of the decades of being here, she wasn't aware, because it was out of her consciousness, that there lived an annoyance. And the annoyance was actually in her voice, like a whinging of some sort. You know, there was a whinging going on. And it's been there for a while, but she's a beautiful giving being. So it's just her, it's like you got used to it as her style. And what showed up is this annoyance wanted an out. It needed to come out. And to, rather than be the diplomat that makes who they are not and who self is, to then make it okay and to meet that rather than self became annoyance. And the answer to it was really to not see it as lacking when one doesn't meet the other party. Not go along with it because they can't compromise, so you compromise with them continuously, which had been going on in such a generous, giving way for decades. And this annoyance had been building up unconsciously to herself. So what showed up was wonderful because it showed up this clarity of what I want. What do I want? Do I want to go? Do I not want to go? Rather than, okay, I'll go along. And then when we do that, it never works out. Have you noticed? It never works out. But if you're very clear about what you want, and if you say, yes, I want to, regardless of what happens, it's okay because the wanting was there. So what had happened is that the wanting couldn't show up because the message in her was interpreted as, I can't. And I can't is a negative. And rather than, because if it's I can't, it goes, oh, yes, I can. It flips into an I can. But if you're clear that it's a wanting or not wanting, then it isn't I can't and I can. It becomes, I actually don't want that. I'm fine here. Enjoy. I'm content here. And her voice changed. She spoke in statement voice, like clarity, rather than an annoyance that she couldn't get away from for a long time. The voice changed. Be self. Be clear about what you want. You do not have to make others comfortable in what they want. Be self. There's a calmness in it. And the other aspect that showed up was someone who has lived half her life in compliance, in necessity, in having to serve, whether she wanted to or not. And at 60, and this showed up 3 times this weekend, the freedom of 60. I mean, if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 is free. There's this freedom of life that shows up like life is only beginning. I mean, if only we knew that in our 20s, we'd be looking forward to 60. Better still, be 60 when you're 20 and find this delicious freedom. And what had happened is that this freedom still lived at some level within this being as still looking forward to that freedom, even though it had arrived. And it had arrived by dealing with being able to let go of having to deal with the tornadoes that belong to others, or needing to worry about people who'd gone through the bottom of the barrel that there was no bottom to it, and feeling attached to it. Somehow these things had got sorted out by the time this being was 60. And what needed to happen was to claim that that exists now and that she can enjoy it for the rest of her time here. And in that freedom, more time can show up. Because there's no rub that rubs life away. Because when one enjoys life, and the beauty here was, because it wasn't so pleasant at the beginning of her life, the heightened aspect of the freedom was multiplied exponentially in the joy she's feeling in life now. And it's kind of those who had a fabulous time. They can only remember the good times of when they were young. As they get older, they miss that. Well, that was the reverse of this. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we can all be present to the wonderful aspect of now, and that every day is a new now to live into? And that was showing up. But that's available for all of us at any age if we can click into that self. Another one that came along, and this was very interesting, and it was beautiful because there was an aspect of why can't I have this connection and ownership with money? Because money is only an issue when you don't have enough. When you have enough money, money isn't an issue. What showed up here? The spirit literally said, I have no connection. I don't have a connection to money. And the mind said, no, neither do I. So there were two aspects that had really no connection to it. They were in agreement. And if you think about it, fiat money is nothing. There's nothing backing it except our belief. So this connection showed itself that the true connection was what she loved to do. And in loving what she does, the energy of that supports her. And through that connection of the love, she could let and feel the connection to the money, and therefore feel a connection to the currency of that. And that was beautiful to feel. There are so many who are wealthy, but they're not wealthy. But to have this love and to have that supported in your life by that which comes your way through that, that's truly wealth. And that was felt and connected to. How good is that? And the last bit I want to share with this is kind of tricky. How do I speak this? The best way to speak it is when we are most ourselves. Timelessness appears and we disappear. It's the ultimate bliss, it's the ultimate orgasm, it's the ultimate where we are so involved, we go, where did time go? Because it's almost like, there's even sayings, to get yourself, you need to lose yourself. We need to disappear to really feel the absolute presence of ourselves. When I do sessions, it's like, they feel like 5 minutes, and the beings who come also feel like, where did time go? It felt like 5 minutes, but that 5 minutes opened up this wonderful, wonderful space of self exploration, to be that self more and more clearly, to lose oneself in that. So the cards that showed up were self-respect and now. Self. The self remains true. The self remains pure. Your ego may be trying to take you away from the knowing of your whole self. Do not be troubled. Do not be misled. The self is totally unlimited and is guided by your heart and soul. All you need to do is listen and trust self. And that's what I found that people were doing when they realized, stop the diplomat. Be aware of the tar baby, it's not yours to do. Be self. Respect. A sense of reverence surrounding your being creates flow in every thought and action, and it's that timelessness that you enter into. It's the best. Disappearing in the totality of it is bliss. Pay particular attention to yourself, your clothes, your stance, your charisma. Allow your inner pride of self to quietly shine. Honor yourself and respect the needs of others, and whatever needs to be achieved can be done with dignity. And there is dignity in saying, that's not my work. Dignity is, I don't, go ahead, that's your trip, not my trip. there's dignity in that, and we need to give each other the dignity of the choices. And that is always present now. I don't need to read that one out. May this year bring that awareness that loses itself in time to be so clearly itself. Lots of love.